When the LA Lakers traded multiple young players and multiple unprotected first-round picks to the Pelicans in exchange for Anthony Davis, the thought was that this was the type of move that would bring about multiple championships for the foreseeable future, as pairing a superstar big man, a top 10 player in the NBA, alongside another superstar and arguably the best player in the NBA at that time, in LeBron James, that this would change the trajectory of their franchise and bring them back to being one of the most dominant teams in the league. And while the Lakers did win a championship the very season after making this trade, and most would consider that a success despite their most recent failures, the Lakers are in a downward spiral, and having missed the playoffs entirely last season, including even the play-in, are now trending toward that same direction this season, and with no future to show for given all the picks they have traded away and the poor construction they have put around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So it's time for the Lakers to make drastic moves to save this franchise from being a dumpster fire for the next decade. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribed, as about 93% of you watching are not subscribed to the channel. In return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this all season long, and you can hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video. So I don't think anyone would have expected that after winning the championship in 2020 in the bubble, that the Lakers would follow up that run, finishing as the 7th seed the following season and getting knocked out of the first round, to then missing the play-in entirely the season after and sending lottery picks to the Pelicans as a result of it. Now, sure, based on the way the front office had constructed the roster with very little depth around their stars, the fact that they made that horrible trade for Westbrook, who has been an awful fit for them, and of course letting some of their key role players from the 2020 title go, like Alex Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, the latter two being included in that trade for Westbrook. And yes, it doesn't help that Anthony Davis has not been able to stay healthy since winning that title, which the Lakers probably should have expected knowing his injury history even before he joined the team. But the fact of the matter is, this team is really bad, and they're gonna remain really bad for the foreseeable future. But there is one thing that the Lakers can do to save this franchise and start building for the future again, and that's trading. Yes, trading both LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I'm sure a lot of Lakers fans are just gonna click to the next video, but hear me out on this if I still have you. First, the Lakers need to fire Rob Pelinka. He's really not fit to be running a franchise. Yes, I get that he brought in LeBron, although I think Magic Johnson had more to do with that than anything. And yes, I get he made the trade for Anthony Davis, which brought the Lakers a title, but now it's backfiring. And he's been scrambling to make moves ever since, which have turned out to be disasters. But the Lakers need to hire an actual basketball mind, an actual basketball executive, not a former sports agent who really had no business becoming a GM. So I guess that's really the first thing they need to do to turn this franchise around. But the crux of all of this is trading their two best players. Now, I know they're not going to do this because LeBron James is literally the face of the NBA, has been for decades now, and is the league's cash cow. As long as he's on the Lakers, it doesn't matter how bad they are, they're still going to make a lot of money. And look, LeBron James has never been traded throughout his entire 20-year NBA career. And why would you? He's been the best player in the NBA for most of his career. But the fact of the matter is, LeBron James just turned 38. He's not going to be around forever, although who knows, the dude is superhuman. But while it may make sense to hang on to him because he's what makes you relevant, you have to be realistic that at most, he stays with your team for the next 2 seasons, which is when his current contract expires, if he takes his player option on the 2nd year of his deal. LeBron has already said he's going to whatever team drafts his son, Bronny James, which would be expected to happen in the 2024 draft class if he ends up becoming a one-and-done player. And most likely, it's not going to be the Lakers selecting him because they don't have their pick in 2024. So you already know LeBron isn't going to be staying with your team long-term. And while LeBron is 38, teams know he's at the tail end of his career. He's still one of the best players in the league, though, and he's still going to sell tickets no matter what team he goes to. As such, even though his trade value isn't going to be what it was when he was in the peak of his prime, you're still going to be able to get a fair amount in return for LeBron. And before LeBron starts declining, if he ever does, we've been saying that for years now that he's going to start declining, but before he starts declining, you have to maximize his trade value while it's still somewhat high. And the trade market for superstar level players in the NBA right now, thanks to teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Atlanta Hawks making insane trades mortgaging their future for fringe level all-stars, for a guy like LeBron James, even at his age, that can fetch you a minimum, in my opinion anyway, 2 first-round picks and even a young player or 2. Here's the thing, the LA Lakers need draft picks. They don't have a single first-round pick until 2026, which they can't trade because of the Stepien rule. They're looking to trade the picks in 2027 and 2029 to get out of the Westbrook contract, which I think is a mistake, and I'll get to that. Now, there will, of course, be two ends of the spectrum in terms of how people feel about this. The LeBron stands that will say, you're out of your mind. LeBron is a superstar, one of the greatest players of all time. He should at least fetch you 5 or 6 picks, minimum. And while, yes, he's a superstar, one of the greatest players to ever play the game, teams aren't going to want to shell out a massive amount of picks for a guy. Again, one is 38 and only has 1 year left on his deal after the season that the team can control. Will bounce to whatever team his son gets drafted to. But for a team that is looking to make a big splash, to put them over the top into title contention, or a team that is just looking to create big buzz by bringing in LeBron and giving their franchise some relevancy, would likely be willing to part with 1 or 2 first-round picks from LeBron James, even if it's only for a short time that they'll have him. I'm thinking of teams like the Brooklyn Nets, who want to put themselves over the top as clear title favorites, especially with the way they're rolling right now. Or say even the Golden State Warriors, who have young players and picks that they could ship to entice the Lakers, or who knows, maybe even a long shot team like the Phoenix Suns, who have struggled more recently, falling in the standings, and after getting embarrassed in the playoffs last season, could use another superstar level player, even if it's only on a short-term basis. Or the other end of the spectrum, a franchise in desperate need of just bringing in a big name. A team like the Knicks, perhaps, who have been a disaster for years. A franchise that thought they were getting LeBron back in 2010 before he chose to go to Miami instead. LeBron in the Big Apple, even if it's only for a season or 2. And yes, the Knicks actually have the picks and young players they could ship out to the Lakers to get LeBron. 2 first-round picks, Emmanuel Quickley, maybe even Obi Toppin. Obviously, you have to throw in some salary filler guys like Evan Fournier and Derrick Rose. For LeBron, could get it done. And I'm sure some Knicks fans will say that's too much, but you have to remember, it's the Knicks. They're not the brightest when it comes to making basketball decisions at the front office level. But it doesn't stop at just trading LeBron James, because the Lakers need more assets, more capital to build for the future, so they don't lose a decade as a franchise for all the picks that they owe to the Pelicans. And if you're trading LeBron James, you might as well include Anthony Davis, because as good as AD is, he's younger, still in his prime, or I guess by normal player standards, he's still in his prime, even though he always gets injured. More recently, he's been somewhat inconsistent because he's always been in and out of the lineup. I don't think you can seriously say Anthony Davis, he's a player that you build around. I think he's a great 1B or number 2 option, as we saw him be that type of player in the 2020 title. But aside from that, if you're trading LeBron, I don't see how you suddenly just build around Anthony Davis for the future with just the few assets that you have or that you were able to obtain from LeBron James in a trade. But by also moving Anthony Davis, who, yes, his trade value isn't at its peak after suffering yet another injury that has sidelined him, but before his latest injury, Anthony Davis was straight balling, playing at a damn near MVP level, putting up over 27 points per game and 12 rebounds on insane efficiency, shooting close to 60% from the field at a PER of over 31, which was top 5 in the league, 2.1 blocks, 1.3 steals. He's a top 75 anniversary player that was selected anyway, and again, he's only 29. Yeah, you're not going to get an insane haul for Anthony Davis because teams are going to be hesitant of his health and availability, but they sure as hell could get at least 2 first-round picks for AD, maybe even 3 and a young player. I mean, the one thing I should add that makes trading LeBron and Anthony Davis tricky is the fact that both have some of the highest salaries in the NBA, which makes it complicated when finding the right players to match their salaries in a trade. You're talking about a lot of salary filler players that would need to be included in said trade to also go along with the picks that they would ship out, and any potential young players who are still on rookie scale contracts. But for Anthony Davis, if you could even make a trade for, say, a disgruntled star who is also on a high salary, or a team that has a bad contract that they would like to get out of and would ship some extra draft capital as an incentive, that's the perfect fit for what the Lakers would want in return. A team like the Dallas Mavericks comes to mind, who know they need to do everything in their power to keep Luka Doncic around, which currently they have built horribly around Luka, housing a ton of bad contracts with little to work with for the future in terms of their cap space, trading guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Davis Bertans. You could even include JaVale McGee, Maxi Kleber, hell, Spencer Dinwiddie. I'm not saying all of these guys, but you can find enough of these bad contracts to match the salary of Anthony Davis and ship out 2 or 3 first-round picks as an incentive to take on some of these bad contracts. And of course, to get Anthony Davis in return, put another star alongside Luka, that's pretty good in terms of what the Dallas Mavericks would be able to get. The Lakers get their picks, either waive and stretch some of the bad contracts that they take on or let them expire. You free up the cap space by moving Anthony Davis and LeBron between both players. You should be able to acquire 5, maybe even 6 first-round picks, perhaps a young player or 2 as well, and you start building for the future. Now, I know the biggest talk among the Lakers in terms of trade rumors and players to move is getting off Westbrook's contract, trading him along with 2 first-round picks for a team to take on that contract, but I honestly don't see how that makes any sense for the Lakers at this point. Like, if Westbrook still had another year left on his deal, then sure, you do what you can to get out of that. But he's on an expiring deal. Why would you give up 2 future first-round picks when you're going to get him off your books at the end of the season anyway? And look, the one thing the Lakers do have going for them, even if they don't trade LeBron and Anthony Davis, is they have a ton of cap space going into next season. Their only players guaranteed beyond this season are LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Damian Jones, who is a player option, and Max Christie. That's it. Everyone else on the roster is on an expiring contract. You get rid of LeBron and Anthony Davis, acquire a ton of picks, you let some of the bad contracts expire that you had to take on in trading for those guys, you go into the offseason with an insane amount of cap space and flexibility, and although you still have to give up your picks for the next 2 years to the Pelicans, you now at least have some draft capital and cap space to work with for the future, rather than trying to cling on to this idea that you can somehow still be a contender with LeBron and Anthony Davis. It's just not going to happen. Treat the picks you owe to the Pelicans as sunk costs, blow it up, start over. At least this way the Lakers have something to work with for the future compared to where they sit right now, being a lottery team, and a lottery team that doesn't have their picks and 2-star players who aren't going to be around long term. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.